Hey everyone, I'm Michael from Encore Speakers and bringing to you an interview with two fabulous speakers that Encore represents, one in Stephen Dowd and the second in Holly Budge. What I'd love to kind of start with is a congratulations to Stephen. Stephen has just achieved the summit of Everest virtually, which he'll tell us about just in a minute. And of course, Holly Budge, who has her own expedition on Everest too. So Stephen, tell us a bit more about you and your story.
Thank you, Michael. So yeah, my name's Stephen Dowd. I am officially now, as of the last few days, the first paraplegic or tetraplegic to virtually summit Mount Everest. I was challenged by a friend who's also quadriplegic, so effectively following a broken neck, we both lost everything below the neck. And he challenged me to climb the stairs equivalent of Mount Everest. So we covered, in the space of 3.5 days, 8,848 meters of climb, which effectively was equivalent to 3,881 flights of stairs in my house over the course of that time. So yeah, pretty epic challenge, and really proud to have got to the top.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So tell us, Stephen, a bit more about the start of your journey then. How did your accident happen?
So 4 years ago, I was caught in a fairly tragic cycling accident. I hit a barrier I didn't see. It was fairly innocuous. I wasn't traveling quickly. I went over the top of that barrier. I landed on my head, and I immediately sustained a spinal cord injury, which left me paralyzed from the neck down, total paralysis instantly. And I went through a process of rehabilitation following experimental surgery. I was told that my injury was so devastating, they just didn't know what I was going to get back. My wife and I had a very difficult conversation around what the future might look like, and it ended up in conversations around one-way tickets to Switzerland and kind of calling it a day. However, I was offered a lifeline by St George's Hospital, who were conducting an experimental intervention at that time for people like me. There was only 50 that the trial was open to, so I was lucky enough to be co-opted into that. And from there, I was able to be given a foundation, which allowed me to push forward and use my own inner resilience and sort of core planning around how I was going to move forwards and make the best of that situation. Which ultimately took me to the steps of my stairs at home, and as I say, in the last couple of days, it's taken me up and down those stairs far more times than I can remember.
And Wings for Life is the charity that you've raised money for doing this challenge. Is that right?
Exactly. Wings for Life is a spinal cord injury foundation, and Wings for Life fund clinical experimental research. They funded, unbeknownst to me at the time, they funded the experimental research trial that I was on. And since then, it makes sense. They've given me my legs back, so it makes sense for me to give back as much as I can through some of these crazy challenges that I take on.
Fantastic. So, and that brings us to Holly. So, so Stephen, you how many flights of your stairs was it to reach Everest?
It was 3,881. We only counted the up. We didn't count the down.
Fantastic. And Holly, you've been to Everest yourself. Tell us what feats you've achieved.
Yep. So first of all, massive congratulations, Stephen. I've been dying to ask you, have you got to get a new carpet for your stairs?
I tell you what, I should be an advert for these guys, because they literally could say someone has taken them to Everest and back, and I don't need a new carpet. It's as it was.
That's amazing. Yes, so to put it in perspective, it took me 47 days to climb Mount Everest. So I climbed from the north side from Tibet, and I chose to climb Everest from the north side to try and avoid the queues. So a lot less people climb Everest on the north, but the trade-off is there's no rescue. There's no helicopters allowed in that airspace. Right. So you kind of, you assume that risk by climbing on the north side. I'm not saying everyone can get rescued on the south, but there's definitely an active rescue service on the south side. So yeah, it was tough. I get asked a lot, what was climbing Mount Everest like? Extremely long, for large periods of time, incredibly boring, because you're sitting around acclimatizing. So you do 3 rounds of acclimatization over that 47 days. And what that means is you get to base camp, and on the north side you actually drive to base camp, which is kind of crazy, driving to 5,000 meters. So when you arrive, you don't feel your best, and it's quite bizarre driving there because the Chinese have put so much money into the infrastructure of that route that you are on brand new tarmacked roads straight up to base camp. So you hang out at base camp for a few days, and you know, there's two schools of thought. Some people try and stay quite active to acclimatize, and other people don't do a lot, just lie in your tent and try and rest and get as much food in as you can and just hang on to the fitness that you've already got. Then you move up to advanced base camp and you feel, you know, pretty rough then. That's 6,500 meters, so it's pretty high. And I remember having a splitting headache when I got up there. It took about 12 hours to walk from base camp. And then from there, you go up to the North Col. You just touch the North Col at 7,000 meters. And then you come all the way back down to base camp and you rest for a week.
Wow. Then
you do it all again, but you spend a night at North Col, which is a really uncomfortable night. You're not on supplemental oxygen at that point. And it's pretty uncomfortable. I get really anxious at altitude, physically anxious, like I'm scratching myself, and I just have to really try and keep a quiet mind. Like I just try and really limit stress when I'm at altitude. So I make sure I'm really organized. I know where everything is. And I'm really purposeful with everything I do, and I don't want to expend energy where I don't have to, which sounds silly because every single step is seriously hard work the higher you go. So you spend your night there and you think, oh, I can see the summit, I'm so close. The reality is you're incredibly far away from the summit at the North Col, but then you have to go all the way back down to base camp and spend another week hanging out at base camp before you go.
This sounds reminiscent because Stephen, although you did over 3,000 flights of your stairs going up, obviously you've got to get down to the bottom of your stairs to get back up again. And so
yeah, exactly. I did the up and down together, effectively.
Yeah.
But it's a mind game, because every time you go up and then come back down, you're not getting stronger, you're getting weaker. You know, your body, you're losing muscle. You know, you're dropping fat as well. I think I lost about 10 kilos during that expedition, and that's, people generally lose between 5 and 10. So you feel like you're fading away. So you've really got to look after yourself and keep that mental strength to get back up there for that summit push. So I could chat about this all day, so I'll keep it brief. But on the summit push, it turned out I was actually climbing Everest just as a two-man team. Just me and a Sherpa, who's a great friend of mine. We've climbed lots of other mountains together. And there's pros and cons of being a two-man team. Obviously, you're quite agile and you can make decisions quickly. But the downside is if anything happens to either one of you, you know, you're on your own. But the rewards for us was we actually got to spend half an hour on the summit of Everest with a completely blue sky. And there was no one else on the summit. So this is really unheard of. You know, most people are queuing, and you get your photo on the summit and then you go back down. So a lot of people don't even get the view either. So you'd feel a bit disappointed after 47 days or, you know, just under 47 days by the time you reach the summit and you don't even see anything. So I felt fortunate, but on the way back down, we got caught in a storm and had to spend a night, just the two of us, at 8,300 meters. And it was just the most terrifying night. This storm just did not relent. And I thought the tent was just going to be blown off the mountain. And I mean, my background skydiving, so I kept thinking, if I'm in free fall but inside of this yellow tent, I'm going to know what that feeling feels like.
Yeah, absolutely.
But obviously, won't have my parachute.
Oh, it's crazy. So Stephen, you obviously, I mean, Holly, we'll come back to your reasoning for getting behind it.
Yes,
But
yeah, no
Steve,
worries.
what was your reasoning for wanting to challenge yourself? I mean, we're comparing, Summit and Everest, literally compared to figuratively. But for you, for someone who is a quadriplegic, to be able to climb even one flight of stairs, never mind over 3,000 flights of stairs. What is it that I know we've discussed afterwards? You're still in a lot of pain. Just getting to your office right now is a struggle for you because of what you've gone through. So what drove you to want to do it?
Well, it's a couple of things really. For people with spinal cord injury, which is not necessarily as well known as you might expect. There are a lot of people out there with spinal cord injuries, but it's not a hot topic for a lot of people. You don't always know someone with that, so you wouldn't necessarily know what the life of somebody with a spinal cord injury is like. Obviously, I have lived that for 4 years now, and it's been pretty crazy. I'm very, very lucky that I'm what's called a walking quadriplegic, so I can actually move around now, and I've got a lot of stuff back, but a lot of people don't. So I thought I wanted to do it partly as a way of talking about how people with spinal cord injuries have to climb a mountain every single day just to do the basics, just to do the very basics of life. They have to pull on all of their energy systems, all of their resilience, and all that sort of stuff that you need just to be able to do what you and I would consider easy to do.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to raise awareness for spinal cord injury and the paralysis that comes with that, and the mountains that they have to climb regularly. Also, as a fundraiser, at the moment, I got behind, the second reason as well is that a friend of mine, Ed Jackson, who's a former professional rugby player, dove into the shallow end of a swimming pool about 3 years ago and broke his neck, and he was also paralysed. So he wanted to climb his stairs. He came up with this crazy idea of doing a virtual climb indoors and summiting Everest. He has metaphorically and physically climbed some mountains, like Mirror Peak. So when I heard that he wanted to do it too, and there was an opportunity to do it alongside him, I really wanted to support Ed in what he was doing and raising money for Wings for Life, for the NHS, and also for the Everest Orthopedic Foundation that builds spinal units in Nepal.
Oh, that's fantastic! And what have you managed to raise between you?
We're at 49 grand at the moment.
Wow, awesome.
So
wow.
Yeah, we're just under the 50k mark, which is incredible. I mean, the majority of the lion's share of that's been done by him. He's much more of a kind of famous face than I am, so he can pull on that, and then obviously there's a lot of coverage. But I've been able to do my best, and I fully got behind him. So all of my fundraising went into the same pot. All of my storytelling has all been about supporting Ed and his challenge. I was very lucky to get there. When did he finish? I finished at 12:30. He finished about 4 hours later, both climbing in our own houses.
Fantastic. And Holly, for you, what's your I know in the past, obviously, as you said yourself, you're a skydiver, and you've skydived Everest as well, the first woman ever to do it. What was your real reasoning for wanting then to summit Everest?
What was my reason for wanting to summit Everest? I think because I work as an expedition leader in the Himalayas, or have done in the past, the first question you ever get asked is, have you climbed Everest? And that seems to be a benchmark. And I've climbed more technical mountains, because Everest isn't a particularly, it's not a technical mountain, it's just an extremely long walk at high altitude. So it kind of, I kept thinking, God, I want to be able to say, yes, I have climbed Everest, but I've also climbed this, and this. And it started playing on my mind that. But also, Michael, when I skydived Everest, that was the first time I laid eyes on the mountain. And I just thought, one day I'm going to be back to try and climb to the summit of this mountain. But I didn't know anything about mountaineering at that stage. So 7 years ago, I set about learning how to mountaineer, and that quickly led me back to the Himalayas, and then I've got quite a few big Himalayan peaks under my belt. So my advice to anyone, and I do get asked this a lot, is don't make Everest your first mountain. I met people on Everest that had never stepped foot on snow before.
Wow.
And we're going to the summit.
Yeah,
so Yeah, get some other mountains under your belt before going to Mount Everest.
Both of you guys are professional speakers. Both of you share your messages with corporate audiences, with associations, with franchises, and that sort of thing. Stephen, what would be, some of the top things that you would bring out of the challenges that you've had that you would help people with in your messaging?
I think now is a really interesting time, because obviously what with the lockdown of COVID-19 and some of the things that people have been forced to change, whether that be within their home life as much as their work life, I speak specifically around challenge and forced change and developing resilience ahead of time, pre-planned resilience effectively. So obviously using my story as a backdrop, my paralysis story as a backdrop, and then some of the crazy challenges that I've done. I mean, Everest is the most recent, but I also found myself getting back on the very same bike that I fell from and cycling 100 miles on a turbo trainer just a year after my injury. So I've gone through some other challenges where I draw upon what happens within my own mental state as well as my physical state to be able to take on what would be seemingly impossible challenges. Holly gave me some fantastic words of advice before this Everest climb, and I listened to them as I was climbing. Your words, Holly, were ringing in my ears about just taking smaller steps, chunk it down, make it achievable, little goals that you can do step by step. And it really resonates with me, because that's exactly how I operate. It's how I've got through paralysis and the recovery journey, and it's how I got to the top of Everest at home.
Did you smile through the pain?
I did that 3 or 4 times, and every time I thought Holly would be very proud.
So Holly, elaborate for us, Holly. What was your advice to Stephen, and what's your advice that you would give to others too?
Yes, yep. So my as a speaker, my message is about turning your fear into action and being proactive with your fears and thinking big, dreaming bigger. But with Stephen, he asked me for 3 tips, and my tips were: keep a quiet mind. Certainly when you're at altitude, those negative voices come thick and fast, and you really do have to learn how to keep them at bay. Otherwise they really do start taking over, and you start questioning your abilities and whether you should be there or not. My second piece of advice was listen to music. That really helps me when I'm climbing to keep a quiet mind. And my third piece of advice, which someone else told me, I've just done the coast to coast in New Zealand, which is a pretty grueling race. And someone said, smile through the pain. And I thought, what are they on about? And I did. I started smiling at the worst bits in this 17.5-hour endurance. And I found it just changed my whole mindset. Just smiling, it sort of brought a more positive mindset about. So I'm glad that Stephen found that as well. It's a very simple thing. I've got lots of simple tips and tricks for the mountains, but that definitely seemed to work really well.
And it's, in a way, it's strange how those things work so well for us in a business context. I know when I was first taught sales, one of the things was whenever you're speaking, particularly on the telephone, make sure you smile before you pick the phone up, because you'd be so surprised at how different not only your attitude to that person is on the phone, but how your voice appears on the phone when you're actually talking to that person because you're smiling, and when we face any of our challenges, the thing you say about the negative voices, that really kind of resonates, and particularly for people right now, there's an awful lot of negativity going on, and we can little afford to beat ourselves up right now. We've got to maintain that positivity. So it's been fantastic. Well, look, we're going to have to draw our quick interview to a close, but Holly, Budge, thank you very much for being with us. Stephen,
no worries.
And congratulations again on your achievement. If anyone out there is looking for some more support for their organizations, or they'd like more information about Stephen or Holly, then please do reach out and get in touch.